Facilities Committee meeting for the Grosse Pointe Public School System Board of Education. It's a little bit cramped. The media center was not available, so thank you everybody for your patience and understanding and consideration of your closely pressing neighbors. We'll call this meeting to order and we'll start with Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, so the first thing I'd like to do is introduce everybody at the table from audience left, my right, around this way, so everybody knows who's involved in the conversation. And then the second thing is going to be public comment. I'll try to get some direction for our public comment section after everybody introduces themselves. Please.
I'm Paul Theriault with Plante and Realpoint. We're the owner's rep on the bond program and the sinking fund.
Gary Kent with Plante and Realpoint.
Andrea Agrusa, CFO.
Andrea, Tuttle, Superintendent.
And Matteson, Director of Facilities.
Clint, Derringer, Trustee and Facilities Committee Chair.
Tim Klepp, Trustee.
Sean Hutton, Trustee.
Jeremy Motz with Clark Hill, outside legal counsel for the district.
Roy Bishop, Deputy Superintendent, Clicker.
All right. For public comment, can you raise your hand if you plan to give a public comment? Just a quick round number. Okay, it's fine. You're not committed or not committed right now. I just wanted to get a ballpark number. We generally try to keep it to approximately 3 minutes. I don't have a timer. I don't plan on implementing a timer, but I will give you a 30-second warning if we run over time to try to be considerate of everybody, and then we'll count down from 30 seconds there. Appreciate everybody's understanding on that. We'll start with my left and move to the right, and before we move on to the next agenda item, I'll make sure there's another opportunity to change your mind. So, first public comment.
I'm just here to support the football player for South, and I'll be really short. I just think sometimes we move a little bit slow, so I heard it might be delayed. I know, like with the Little League fields, even in the Farm City, they delayed those forever, and now I look back and I drive by and I'm like, oh, those fields are awesome. So I think like sometimes you get, you move things slow and time goes by, and you just want everybody to have a chance to be able to use the facilities, and that's it.
Appreciate it. If you could, please state your name and your city of residence.
Cliff Grabowski, Grosse Pointe Farms. I have a son at Grosse Pointe South. Had 2 other ones there and have had a great experience.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Next public comment working this way. Yes. Okay.
Hi, I'm Brian Arnold. I'm the president of the Red Barons Youth Football Organization. I just wanted to make a comment regarding the fields also. Obviously we've tried to expose ourselves to north and to south. We're community-based, and we want to continue that relationship, obviously. But one of the things we've noticed this year, especially as we've gone back to the field, south especially compared to north, we have issues. We have had multiple players having to come out of games, even from things as simple as like they've gotten tackled and the beads that are in the turf have gone up in their eyes, and we've had to wash them out. Just from the wear from the fields throughout the season. Even our youth football players are slipping when they're trying to make cuts on the field. I can only imagine, and I've seen some of the South games too, but I can imagine it's even worse for, obviously someone that's 200 pounds trying to make a cut like that, and what that could do to their legs or to their ankles, or, risking injury in that manner there. And then the last thing, and I think it's one of the biggest points really, is when it gets worn down like that, right, like any impact is going to be greater. And I've seen it as an increase in concussions. We've had kids on our team have concussions, and when they get tackled on the fields, and this is, again, dealing with kids that are between 6 years old and 13 years old, slamming against something, if not properly, taken care of and not maintained, there's an increase in that, and that's something that obviously as an organization we have to look at going forward. If we want to, go there, we would probably skew more towards north at this point because it's just safer for the kids. And I'm sorry, I'm also a resident of Grosse Pointe Farm City.
Hi, I'm Joe Michelotti, Grosse Pointe Farms. I'm here to support moving up the replacement of South's turf based on all the factors that Brian mentioned and Cliff mentioned, and you're going to hear just as 100% safety issue for the kids and all the boys and girls that play on it. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead.
John Morano, resident of Grosse Pointe Farms. I have a son who's going to be a varsity lacrosse player, ideally, at South. And, South is a gem of an institution. And if the voters have approved moving forward with this, if there's any way to expedite the implementation of the plan, I would wholeheartedly support that. I think a lot of the residents of the community would as well. Thank you.
Patrick Patch, Grosse Pointe Farms, president of the girls lacrosse. I too am here to move that date up. As you guys all know here that sit in this room, how often that field is used, not just with football, but with lacrosse, with field hockey, with soccer, with Grosse Pointe Little League. So if we can move it up, I know the residents, we all voted on this bond so we could take care of that field and all the other facilities we need to take care of. But it really is important. And my daughter won't be able to play on the new field, but I think it's important for our future athletes to be able to play on it. And like John said, our facility, our Grosse Pointe South, we all love it. Our kids all went to school there. I went to school there. My wife went to school there. It's a great school. And it would be awesome to be able to move the date up and get that field done for our future athletes. Thank you.
Melissa Petz, Grosse Pointe Farms. In all transparency, I also work for Grosse Pointe South. I deal with hundreds of students every day. I know how much that turf gets used. I'll have 6 family members within the next 2 to 3 years using that turf on a daily basis. I think it's important to have great working conditions in all of our facilities for safety and just for enjoyment and fun and keeping our community state of the art and enjoyable for everybody. So I'd like to, move these dates up as well.
Anybody from the back row?
Hi, I'm Margaret Michelotti, also Grosse Pointe Farms resident. And I'm also here to please ask to move the Grosse Pointe South turf renovation up to this summer 2026, using the sinking fund dollars that are now at $11 million per year. I'm standing here also as a concerned mom of athletes that are practicing and playing on this turf right now at Grosse Pointe South. I visually witnessed for myself with my son playing there how bad the turf is. I've also been able to visually witness how much it has declined over the last few years, having 3 boys play in the last 5 years on this turf. My son, a junior, has come home this year saying he was slipping so bad that I even went out to purchase new cleats. Came home, tried the new cleats, and soon realized that it is not the cleats that's making him slip. It is the turf's condition. And he also said when it's raining, it's just even more dangerous out there. With how bad the turf looks, we still have the girls soccer, girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse this spring, and next year we would have 6 seasons of sports also to play on this existing field. I'm a Gridiron, also football board member, and I know we do everything we can to provide such a safe and amazing experience for our athletes. And I'm just here tonight asking you to please do the same, to please make sure that our children are safe and not being put at risk for any injuries. Safety is number 1 on every parent, grandparent, fan's minds while they're sitting in those stands. Grosse Pointe South brings our beautiful community together, and I'm here to ask that we make sure we're doing everything we can to provide a safe environment for our kids, not only off the field, but on the field. Please prioritize the Grosse Pointe South turf field a year sooner. It's not worth the potential risk to our students. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Weber, Grosse Pointe Farms resident. We're always talking about numbers for our community. Athletics and academics are a huge draw to Grosse Pointe. If you look at the neighboring fields, their turfs far outweigh, are more beautiful than Grosse Pointe South. I mean, it is such a detriment to our community to have people that are moving back home, moving from out of state to take a look at our facilities. I mean, I come home, I thought there's mouse poop in my bathroom. It's actually the turf. It's all over my house, little mouse, pretend mouse turds. But anyway, obviously the safety of our students is so important, but also to our community, for our facilities to look beautiful. If you look at the medical research, there's a direct correlation between the age of the turf and injury. If you ask the athletic director, injuries are increasing with frequency. So for all of those reasons, if we could consider moving up the turf, that would be very beneficial for all parties. Thanks.
My name is Jessie Rouleau. I live in Grosse Pointe Park. And I have been the head field hockey coach at Grosse Pointe South since 2018. Field hockey is a turf sport. I have two kids at South. My son Sam is a junior, and my daughter Mia is a sophomore. They both also use the turf. They play football, field hockey, and lacrosse. I run our high school program, but I also run our K-8 neighborhood club program and Great Lakes K-12 field hockey and the Grosse Pointe United team for North and South players as well. So in the sport of field hockey alone, over 400 Grosse Pointe kids have been on that turf since April. I have a lot of experience out on that turf. It's overdue. Back in 2024, I would say it was also overdue. It's not been safe for a full year. The piles of rubber pellets have actually come into place. People think it's overfilled or what's going on with the pellets. It's because the green grass is gone. So there's no more support for those pellets. That's why they're everywhere. The green grass has completely disappeared. So it's in worse condition than any other school field that I have traveled to in several years. What does not safe mean? You guys have all kind of talked about it. Little kids, high school kids, the rubber pellets get in the mouth guards. When they're sweaty, it sticks to their face, it sticks to the back of the neck, the hair, the eyes. It's pretty messy, and it's definitely not a safe material to just kind of have that kind of exposure to, especially when you have kindergartners out there with their little mouth guards in for the first time. And they are not happy with that as well, the kindergartners, when that happens. I've seen multiple slips, ankle twists when the cleats can't grip, like Margaret said. This summer I had a high school player break her wrist, and it was on a basic mobility. We were doing intro body mechanics, skipping, okay, basic, using your arms, and she slipped and she fell and she broke her wrist and she was out the entire summer. And that's a sophomore who had great potential. She didn't have any opportunity to play for the whole summer. So cutting, changing speed, changing direction, these are all athletic moves that in my opinion, it's not safe to perform them well out there. I've had to change my practice plans, call opposing coaches and warn them about the condition of our field. Especially in field hockey, we hit the ball, if you've seen a game, the ball pops up. And our faces are low, we play like this, so ball comes, smacks you in the face. And we have real trouble with that, making sure everybody stays safe. The MHSAA assigner, some of you guys know Pat Hayes, you guys probably do. Pat assigns and umpires for girls lacrosse and field hockey. This season, or at our home games multiple times, she's like, this turf needs to be replaced. So looking at another winter weather, spring sports, I cannot imagine what it will look like going into a very busy summer. I don't know how many of you guys go out to that field, but there are summer camps, there's practices 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Adult fitness groups, whether we like it or not, they're out there. Aging adults use it. I've had so many elderly people say, why do you lock these gates? It's such a safe space. Our sidewalks aren't safe to walk on. They like to be out there and walking. So many kids playing, being outside, enjoying the weather, riding their bikes around the track, even though they shouldn't be. But they're on the turf, they're on their track, and they're active. And I think it's just a great community hub. I would love to see it back up to the standard that I think we all deserve. Thank you.
Rick Linnell, City of Grosse Pointe. I would echo much of what was said. I'm not a coach, but I happen to have, as of incoming freshman next year, will be my 5th child playing that field. And I believe it's that field. In fact, I called my oldest daughter in Chicago to verify, but I'm pretty sure she played on the same field through all different sports, all the ones that have been mentioned, lacrosse, soccer, football. And I hear the comments, and I would just echo it, and that is that this is an asset. Grosse Pointe has a lot of assets. This is a very significant asset, and I would say that, to me, this is something important. This is something you put your money, you have the money, you use it for the purpose that it's intended for. The kids are out there trying their hardest. I think everyone else should be trying their hardest to give them the format and the ability to play their best and get the most out of the sport, which would include making a very safe environment, most specifically a safe field.
My name is Ilya Snyder. I'm a resident of the city and also the JV soccer coach, so I'm here to represent the soccer program. Our head coach is out of town. To reiterate what the other programs have told you, the field, from comments from all the players, all of our kids, from being at other schools, really is in poor shape compared to the other fields we've played on. A little bit soccer related, this might not be accurate, but I was under the assumption as one of the coaches, we were given information, we talked to a lot of parents about how the bond was going to help. Also, and I'm assuming for cost savings at the same time would be the improvements of the area behind the bleachers to make more usable space, which affects us as soccer. We've literally canceled a lot of Friday soccer practice because of the lack of space. We share it with field hockey, with football. We've had to cancel practice because we've had to run soccer practices on the outfield of the softball field. So if that has an effect on it too, if it's being all done at once, the improvement of the grass area behind, as well as, I don't think I need to reiterate any more, soccer is affected even as well. When it's wet out, we're not like football with running, we run and have to stop and do a lot of things chasing a soccer ball. If it's wet, it's very difficult for the players. Not that I really want to put a lot of credit in my 18-year-old son's complaining, because I tell him sometimes to stop whining. They all will comment and say, and from a little bit of a selfish point of view, I'll also say soccer this year had over 75 kids. We probably will have to, for the first time in a long time, cut kids from the soccer program, and it makes it difficult to keep the kids who play very competitively. It affects our ability to be a competitive program, because they say, well, I got to play there though, and the field's terrible. And soccer's growing, soccer has more kids, we need the space, and as I say, obviously there's considerable comment about the safety of it, which is well known, but if it's going to be an issue also of accelerating the improvements to the other areas, that would benefit everybody, because it would, I think it would let us have more space to be able to share. The football team has to go to the outside of the baseball outfield sometimes, and we have to go on the field. So I'm assuming from that point of view, it's also, I think it would be beneficial for everybody, the amount of time and the amount of space we have to share to get that all done at once and as fast as possible, so that we can actually do it. So that's all.
Hello, my name is Florian Bukovec. I'm a city inhabitant, I would say. But I speak in the name of my two sons. Both are or played on the varsity team. My oldest is Jonah. He was the captain on the team, and he actually in the district semifinal he got injured on the turf, which partially I think had to do with the quality of the turf. Defender slipped and hit him on the ankle, and I think that impacted the district final game for him. I think the major concerns in terms of when I talk to my sons are, number one, the slipping, number two, the turf burn. When you slide tackle, I don't know how many of you played soccer, but when you slide tackle, you get, your skin just tears off, and those things don't heal for quite a while. The bounce of the ball is not great, and now I'm also on the board for Eastside FC for the soccer club, and we installed turf at the Eastside tennis facility. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it. It's a small space, but when you put turf down, you realize how important a good turf is, because there is a G-force to it. If it's too high, if it's too low, it impacts the injury level. And waiting longer, I think, is really putting our players at risk. And I think you mentioned earlier that this is kind of a representation of where we are and who we are in Grosse Pointe. And we have, for the Eastside soccer club, we have a team now that plays at the national level for the first time. So we have teams come in from other regions, from other states. And I think this is a great way for us to show how good our district is. And we're very, very thankful for the partnership, I want to say that. And that we're allowed to use the South Field here and there for our games. But we do have plenty of games there for our 11v11 teams, and I think having a great turf there will make a big, big difference. And 1 year sooner is, I think, 1 year earlier to shine. So thank you.
I know I have this whole thing written down, but I'll probably be repeating a lot of it, but I think my biggest concern is safety. And as much as we want to sit and say, it's South students, it's a community. I mean, you hear it left and right. It's East Side, it's Red Barons, it's my 10-year-old who wants to go have a pickup football game out on the field. And I'll speak for my kids. My name is Julie Lubo, Grosse Pointe Farms. I have 5 kids. My oldest is a freshman in college. Played on this field last year. My understanding when looking it up, the lifespan of the turf field is 8 to 10 years. I think we're on year 11. That raises a red flag for me as a parent. I asked my son about the turf field, I spoke to him today, and he said, Mom, it's the worst field we played in, hands down. He said, you're playing on cement. I don't want to play on cement. I don't want my kid playing soccer, field hockey, lacrosse, football on cement. I have a freshman who played football for coach. He would come home, I couldn't get his elbow to stop bleeding. He would wrap them, he wore sleeves, didn't matter. Every single time. He's falling on cement. You can't have kids playing out in cement left and right. I would guarantee you, we have more community students on that field than we do in the classroom. We would make that science room as safe as we could, and it would probably be 100 kids would probably benefit from that. Why are we not doing that now for the thousands of community kids that play on that field every single day? That is why I'm here. I'm here to represent my kids. I'm here to represent every one of our little kids, our older kids who've fallen, who've hurt themselves, who potentially can. We have the money. We all voted yes for this to get it done. I don't want to keep waiting. I don't want another kid to get a concussion, another kid to come home with a torn ACL, skinned elbow, you name it. We did this for a reason. I don't know why we're waiting. We're only putting our kids at risk the more we wait. Thank you.
Hi, Brendan Walsh, Grosse Pointe City. I've got a junior who's a field hockey player, a sophomore who's a lacrosse player, and then a 12-year-old who plays youth field hockey on the fields as well. Just here to echo the sentiments that I would love to see the field updated sooner rather than later. The only thing I'd add is I think it's a great outward piece to show who we are as a community, the school district, as we look to attract more families to the area. So thank you for letting me speak.
My name's Tony Salusti. I lived here for 30 years, and Grosse Pointe Farms, and now in Grosse Pointe City before. I've been a coach for the entire time, from the beginning to end, 3 sports almost every season, and had 4 boys go through South. And and what's been said has just been magnificent. That it is, we have a great facilities, but this is tired. It's time for a change. In regards to the kids that play on the field, I mean, my kids, I take my grandkids down and we go play on that field. There's guys out there kicking field goals in the off season. There's guys playing touch football. This facility gets used. Also, not just the kids that are playing varsity sports, but the kids that are having PE classes at the school, and the kids that are using it casually, and then also old folks like me that kind of run out for a pass every now and then too. But I just want to say that I love the cooperative spirit that's going on here, and I hope we get to the right answer for our town. We've just been too polarized for too long in our country, and it just feels like this is just the right decision for everyone. From a safety perspective, from a use perspective, from a practical perspective, I would just urge you to go ahead and change it now. And if we need to do some things to in the future to help raise some funds as well for other things, those are good things to do too. Thank you.
Anybody else in the back to us?
Hi, I'm Meg Leonard, Grosse Pointe Farms. I did a quick count before I got here, looking at the rosters of freshman JV and varsity just this most recent fall at South. I eliminated cross country, who you see them running down Lakeshore more often than you do, they don't run around the track. And obviously our swim team that doesn't use our field. That said, there were roughly 200 students combining to make those rosters. And I would say that that's a pretty significant amount of our student body using that facility day to day. And it's not a football field, it's a multi-use football. It's a multi-use field when you think about it. And where we've grown so much in improving our facilities and maintaining them. Anybody that's worked in the concession stand may know that might be our next thing that we need to rally around. But I just think of that impact. My youngest of 4 children is now a junior at South. He plays football and among other sports. And just to come, like Kate Weber said it, you come home and there's honestly probably a handful of pellets every day that are from the field. It's one student coming home who's covered in that. You know, and then what do? We bring more onto it, we rake it, it's still floating on the top of the field. You know, that's just, it's subpar. And I think a delay really is mostly unjustifiable. I'd love to see it improved as soon as it can happen. I supported the bond, I'm sure there's many people in here that have as well, and I just think that that's a fair expectation of the trust we put behind saying, please be good stewards of this money and make the most impactful changes. I think it qualifies as one.
Kevin Nugent, Grosse Pointe Farms. I'll just echo what's been said a lot here, and a quote from the Lakeview High School football coach who said that South was the toughest surface that they played on all year. And I know you guys want to get the most out of your facility upgrades and make them last, they say 8 to 10 years, but the telltale sign for the turf field, any turf field, is the amount of rubber infill that starts coming up once the blades of grass have been worn down. And you can see from observing the field and walking the field and playing on it that all that rubber infill on the surface is not stable. And so when you put foot to it, you slide, you slip, and all of those things provide a lot of concerns for safety. So aesthetics aside and everything else, it's just at a point now where it's understood with turf management, it's just not at a viable point for use. And so it just came up earlier than maybe we thought. But at the end of the day, we have to look at what it is and make a determination that what the right thing to do is to replace that surface. It's best for everybody, all the athletes that come here to visit and play, as well as all of the people that use the field from the community. So I think you guys have a really good scope of everything involved, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Are there anybody else didn't get a chance to make a comment? Appreciate that. That's it, we'll move to the information and discussion portion of the agenda, and we'll turn that over to Dr. Tuttle.
Thank you. We have a very robust meeting with a lot of information, and I just want, given the amount of people that are here, them to know that the South Field is actually a sinking fund project, and we can certainly discuss that because that is a portion of the presentation. Unfortunately, it's kind of at the end of the presentation, so it might be a while till we get there, but certainly willing to discuss that when we get there. We did put together a 3-year sinking fund proposal, so to speak, of how those funds would be. I should talk to the committee, but and so I just wanted you to know that we will be discussing that tonight and where we are with that, and if a recommendation is to change that, we can certainly do that, or to stay the same. So with that being said, we have a lot of experts at the table today. They've already been introduced. I want to thank Dr. Bishop for clicking this evening. First and foremost, and I thank you for being here, and thank you for your representation and your passion. I think extracurriculars in any form is an extension of the classroom, whomever said that, and equally as important, and I've always argued maybe more important for the lessons that are learned on the field and in the band, whatever your extracurricular is. So thank you for that, and so we'll start with slide 1. We have the topics of discussion today on the slide. We have experts in the room who will be discussing this with the committee and all of us in the room. So continue, Dr. Bishop. So again, I want to thank you for being here, but also for the 70% passage rate. And it's really remarkable from someone who's been in this business a long time, not only to have a bond of that magnitude pass, even though it was a no-mill increase, but to have it pass at that significant level indicates your love for the community, for the kids, for the facilities, the majestic facilities that we have in Grosse Pointe, and I think it's all of our goal to maintain those and even make them better. So thank you to everyone indicated on there. Next slide. I do want to show this because I think this is pretty remarkable. In 2023, unfortunately, given the fund balance and the decrease in students, the district took a hit, a downgrade to the Moody rating to an A1. And I'm happy to report, I reported this at the last board meeting, but I'm going to share it as well, and I also have a visual on the side. If you look, going to a AA3 puts us now in the high category, which you may or may not think is important, but it's incredibly important. When you go to sell bonds, which we did last week, we had a remarkable sale. We sold about 4 times what we needed. And if you know how the bond sales work, we obviously will scale that back in interest rates, and people drop out when you lower the interest rates on those bonds. But what I want to share with that is that we, according to the attorneys involved, we were able to sell to companies that would otherwise not have purchased bonds from us by virtue of upgrading to a AA3. So there were a lot of people on that list who bought bonds that otherwise would not have. So it attracts more investors. We had incredible coverage. It was really a remarkable bond sale. And then the lower the interest rates cost by the district on the bond, it's estimated to reduce by 10 basis points, which approximately will save this community roughly just shy of $2 million in interest costs. So kudos to the boards that have worked on this in the past to improve that rating to get us to that level. The higher rating, there are some higher ratings, but out of that high category is only prime, and there are I don't think there are any school districts, I don't want to say definitively, in the state that receive a prime score. So Grosse Pointe is doing really well with the Moody's rating. So again, I want to thank the community because not only the fund balance played into that, the clean audits that we've had, but as well as they were impressed that the community passed both the sinking fund and the bond at such a convincing percentage rate played into it as well. So thank you for that. And now continuing on we're going to start with the bond implementation and procurement strategy. And Paul, I know you're going to talk a little bit about it and turn it over to Attorney Motz. Yes?
Yeah, this is something that you probably showed before, but maybe not in this setting. Just really to give the district an idea of kind of who comprises the team, so to speak. Obviously, we have the district administration and the board. We got bond counsel from Miller Canfield, your financial advisor, PFM, both of whom just helped with the recent bond sale. We also have Jeremy Motz from Clark Hill here this evening, who's going to be helping us with a lot of different things, especially contract templates and negotiations and things like that. And then on here is really just some of the people you'll see from our end, obviously. Myself, Robert Stempian, and Gary, you'll see a lot. Some of the marketing team that help with the informational campaign and will be helping with presentations and things. Our accounting department will be working closely with Andrea, making sure we track all the dollars and budgets and expenditures and things like that. And then Greg and Paul and Brian Smith, who are some of our other partners and helped on different aspects of the programs in the past. So, and then some support staff as well. So there's a big team kind of behind Gary and I, even though you see us a lot. I just want to make sure you knew who we were. So with that, I think we're going to pass it over to Jeremy to talk a little bit about some of the laws that we have to follow along the way so that we stay out of trouble.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, committee. A lot of this stuff is, a lot of committee members and the board has gone through construction projects before, but as we're embarking on a new bond program, it's always good to go back to all the legal building blocks that sort of tell us why we have to do stuff, when we have to do stuff, how we have to do stuff, so we can keep those in mind as we're planning these programs. So here, we'll go over a little bit of sort of design and specifications and things, and why we have to do that, when we have to do that, why we have to do that, some of the competitive bidding requirements and how those come into play, and then obviously getting down to contractor selection approval, and then obviously we don't want to violate the law, and we'll just touch that at the very end. So next slide here as to slide here. This is sort of when and why we have to engage certain professionals for the design and implementation of school construction projects. So our first building block we have is 1263 of the school code. And that has 2 requirements in it that are important to what we're going to be doing in this bond program. Number 1, the school district cannot design or build a school building for instructional or non-instructional purposes, and non-instructional would be the extracurriculars everybody's here was speaking about tonight, that's one of them. And they cannot design and implement a school site, so that's everything on the school site, unless all of the design and construction is in compliance with the school building construction. So that's the first thing of 1263. The second is the state superintendent of the public instruction in the state has sole and exclusive jurisdiction over the review and approval of those plans for school buildings and school sites. So, as you talked about before, we have to have all the School Building Construction Act. There's two things that we want to look about here. First, this is for any project that exceeds $15,000. You can't do much in school construction anymore. This number is sort of strikingly low, but it's been like that since the 60s, and the legislatures found no reason to increase it. But anytime you go over $15,000, the plans and specifications have to be prepared by a licensed architect or a professional engineer. And the law requires that those plans have to be approved by the Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs, which is the State Department. And the reason that does not coincide with the state superintendent, the state superintendent's delegated that authority, which they can do, so that it's really the state superintendent via law that does that. A couple other things that this statute requires: we have to maintain supervision of those projects throughout. And once we engage our architect or professional to do those designs and specifications, we cannot dispense of them after they've done their job. They stay on for the entire project.
Jeremy, I'm going to stop you. I'm going to apologize. We had a miscommunication as who is bringing copies of that for the subcommittee. So Andrea Agrusa is making copies for, at least for our committee members. So you don't have to keep cranking your head.
Yep. So yeah. Okay. So I was just sort of, it's right behind me.
Yep.
So, so you can simply grab
Yep.
that. So when we get into how do we engage our professionals, you can switch one slide. There you go. So when we get into how we engage professionals, first we look at there's no legal requirement to competitive bid the professionals that perform services for school districts. As we'll get into a little bit later, there's a lot of competitive bidding that goes on in school construction, but for the professional services is one that's not required. So we have really the two buckets of professional services that you guys would have for these programs. One, you have your construction design team, that's your architects, your technology designers, your engineers, those. And then you have your supervision management of the construction project, that'd be your construction managers, those. So those are not legally required, however, oftentimes the school district finds benefit in doing competitive bids for those professional services for transparency, competitive pricing, making sure you get the right fit that we talk about later on, and making sure we have the best terms and conditions for those projects. So even though it's not legally required, it's often something that school districts do consider. Sliding to the next, or moving over to the next slide, we have this is our first requirement for competitive bidding, and this is dealing with the actual projects that we've undertaken. So the labor and materials for all the different construction projects. So here, Section 1267 has a very prescribed process that school districts follow for the actual project. This is after we have the project designed, after we have the project approved by the state, we are now then bidding out to actually get the contractors to do the work. So if this has a different number, but it's $31,321, and that's where you can see it says fiscal year 26. That's off the state fiscal year, which is an October 1 fiscal year, not the January 1 fiscal year that schools operate under. That flips over every October. It's an indexed via formula. But this current year, it's $31,321. Any project exceeding that has to be competitively bid. In order to competitively bid that, there's four things that we have to do. First, we have to create an advertisement. That advertisement has to state several things that we have listed here on the slide: the due date for the bids, the date time that bids will be open and read aloud, that you cannot accept late bids, and then we have to have a familiar disclosure affidavit, and we cannot accept one that doesn't have a familiar disclosure affidavit. That's all that's statutorily required in the advertisement. We can add more, but we always want to make sure we have that. Once we have the advertisement, we have to place it in the newspaper one time before bids are due, and we also have to place it on the state's bidding website that the state holds for at least 2 weeks before bids are due. One other requirement that we have to have is we have to require them when they do submit a bid, that a bid is submitted. And then there's several reservation of rights we can talk about, but the biggest one is if we do bid things out, if the bids come in and they're not where we need them to be, we do have the rights to reject all of them, and we have to start over at the top and start again with the advertisement and go on. But those are some things we can do. Switching to the next slide, a lot of the other components that we do in a construction project is the supplies, materials, and equipment. So that is a different statute we have to comply with, and this really just has three things. So if you have to have board policies for these, but you also have to obtain competitive bids for the same dollar amount, $31,321 for any item or group of items that you're going to purchase. And then lastly, the statute does require the board to approve the purchase. There are several things that we can do here without doing bidding. There are some statutory exemptions. If you use the state's bidding program, that they've already bid things out. And then if you're buying food, that's just one that's not going to be for construction, but that is one of the exemptions. I've highlighted cooperative purchasing as well, as when we do have some supplies, materials, and equipment, there are some cooperatives, whether they're state cooperatives, national cooperatives, that have done the competitive bidding portion of it and got very good volume pricing. So we can use that to check the box that we have bid it out. The board would then still approve that purchase, but we can use some cooperative purchasing to do that. Highlighting with supplies, materials, and equipment lastly here, there's no requirement to do the newspaper or post on the state website when it's supplies, materials, and equipment. We always like to highlight that as just some of the differences between the two statutes. Lastly, after we get all the bids in, there'll be a lot of due diligence that goes on. So looking at the contractor approval, once the contractors are vetted and there's recommendations, those will come to the board. The board has the opportunity to review and approve all the different contractors that are been doing the work or supplying and selling the district supplies, materials, and equipment. So that's just a process that we'll go through. And then lastly, in the construction world, if the contract exceeds $50,000, all the applicable contractors that the statute requires will have performance and payment bonds. Those protect the school district to ensure that the project's completed, and that the payment bond is to ensure that the subcontractor suppliers are paid when the school district pays the contractor, that money does get moved on to the various subcontractors that are doing the work for the school district. So lastly, if you guys have fallen asleep in the last 10 minutes of what I was talking about, this boring law stuff, we want to make sure that we don't violate the law, because this comes with some penalties here. So if we violate anything in the school code, that's a misdemeanor. It's only $500 and 3 months in jail. But the bigger one is if the competitive bidding requirements for 1267, those are significant. That's 10% of the cost of the project. I know some big numbers have been thrown out here with some of the projects that we've done, and it's 1 year in jail. So my philosophy here is I'm a school lawyer. I'm here to keep you out of jail, not get you out of jail. So that's why we went over this stuff today, is a place set. So I will turn it back over to Gary and Paul to, unless there's any questions.
Let me ask.
Any questions?
I just want Roy, it'd be going back to like the first page, maybe just in relation to like the construction. One more. You can't design or build without it being approved.
Mm-hmm.
We have some projects where it's obviously a construction project. We're converting a pool into some other use. For other elements where it's just like replacing a boiler that is already in place, is there still a requirement for those kind of projects to be approved as well?
Yes, there's still, for those to be approved, the plans and specifications are generally required if you follow the same process. If you're just renovating the building, updating, there are some issues that come in, like I didn't highlight it, with repairs in certain circumstances. That's exemptions, there are exceptions to the competitive bidding aspect, but we still, have to look at the design and specifications still approved by an architect. Because if we're replacing boilers, we want to make sure that they're done correctly, the right specs and all that stuff.
Okay, good.
I'd like to be able to let Jeremy go. I'm sure he'd love to stay, but we pay by the hour. Just kidding, Jeremy. So if you have any questions while he's here, please ask them now, and then we'll continue. And maybe you guys can spread out in the corner.
The one thing I would just add is, to Jeremy's point, we want to stay out of trouble. So anytime there's a gray area and we're not sure what the right answer is, we reach out to Jeremy right away and just make sure we're on the right track and not getting the district into any trouble. So
way better to be proactive.
We talk a lot, Jeremy and I do.
Anything else? Going once? Safe travels. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
You guys can switch over.
Thanks. So I think all of that's kind of a good segue into governance. So if you think about you think about board policies and procedures, really a lot of the things that are set up currently are really around running a school district. You know, a lot of the board policies and procedures are really set up to run the school district day to day. They're not necessarily set up to run a $120 million bond or a $111 million sinking fund. At the beginning of the last bond, we sat down with administration and actually put some governance policies together of how we would operate for the bond program. That was obviously 7 years ago. We think it's time that we go back and revisit that and update those. To Jeremy's point, some of those dollar amounts change every year. We've got a new CFO. We have some new board members, new administrators. We really thought it would make sense, 7 years later, to go back and update that governance policy. The big things that it talks about are all the legal stuff Jeremy just did about procuring professional services, construction, FF&E, who has what limits of authority. In other words, when do we need to come back to the board? When do we not have to come back to the board? Who signs contracts? Who issues purchase orders? Who processes payments? What does that process look like for the architect to review a payment application, for us to review it, for it to go to Ben and then Andrea, and et cetera, through the accounting department? How do we do change management? So on a lot of the projects on the last bond, we would set up a contingency amount where we had to live within that contingency amount, and anytime we had a single item over $100,000, or if we thought we might broach the contingency, we'd come back to the board and get your approval before we did that. So all those types of things, we just want to make sure that we go back and revisit that document because it's been a while, including how we report back to the board, how we communicate with the community, and then how we reconcile. It's important for us to make sure that we reconcile the budget and the expenditures every month with the accounting department so that their books match our books. We take into account things like earned interest and maybe some credits and things along the way so that we never, again, get off the tracks. So we don't have a document to present yet, but we wanted to just kind of float that balloon so that you were aware that we're working on it, and we'll be back possibly in January with a document for your review. Gary, you want to talk a little bit about
No, thank you very much at all.
All about governance, but you want to
No,
the next slide?
Yeah, procurement strategy, it's a couple of reviews. So like Dr. Tuttle was saying, Mr. Matteson, myself, and Garrett actually met and went over kind of the projects for the sinking fund and the bond and trying to make sure that we're capturing the right things in the right buckets. Obviously with $120 million bond and $11 million a year in sinking fund, we can make sure that we're applying stuff such as technology, right? Some purchases are allowable only in a sinking fund, some are allowable in a bond. So we're shifting things around, and this is our preliminary forecast for the 25-26 sinking fund. So some of these projects you'll see here tonight, such as the North Chiller replacement, the parking lot projects, some of the roofing, which is in the next slide, but ultimately our goal is to stay within that $11 million a year. There is still $1 million in unforeseen emergencies every year because things come up, priorities shift. So any questions on the 25-26?
These are projects that have been designed already. Some of them have been bid out or are in the process of being bid out that we're going to try to tackle come next calendar year.
Yes. Yep.
I guess my question is, how much do we in practice year to year look at the spend? Before we had around $3.5 million in the sinking fund. We get that money in December, is that correct?
December.
The tax bill goes out in December, it's due February 14th.
Okay, and then just looking at a 2-year cycle, I have to imagine that in practice, we're probably able to, with the timeline of projects, spend maybe more than the $3.5 million. How often are you able to do something like that then? Like, I mean, if you looked at the 2 years, it's $22 million. Correct. Now, timing-wise, are you able to do more than 11 million or more than 3.5 million practically?
Sometimes it depends on lead times. It depends on how we're weaving this between the sinking fund and bond projects so we're not stepping on each other's toes throughout all these projects. That's one thing that we're going to have to manage is we may want XYZ projects right now, but we want to make sure that we're not stepping on a sinking fund project or a bond project as we migrate through this. So there is potential there to what you're saying. It's just based on lead times of equipment, timing of the bond, things like that.
If I could add to that, I think you're spot on. I think it's a great question is, people see the big numbers and they think we're gonna get all the money at once, but the reality is we only get $11 million a year on the sinking fund, and the first series of the bond's only 25. We don't sell the next series for a couple more years. So we do have to be prudent in how we plan, and it does take 6 to 9 months to design some of these projects. So really having like a 3-year rolling plan on the sinking fund where we can look out a little bit further to understand what the real needs are. We had the turf on the list, but if it's worse than we thought it was, it's good that it's at least on that 3-year rolling plan so that maybe we can make some adjustments, that type of thing. And then on the bond, same thing. We don't want to be doing a bond project and doing a sinking fund project where we're running into each other. We got contractors with competing permits and things like that where they're in each other's way. So it does take a lot of coordination.
I'd say, North is a perfect example. This summer we're doing the student parking lot and then also the roof. So, we have to make sure that we're coordinating, making sure that access routes still have fire access and all that. So it's just a lot of overlapping going on throughout the district. But, lead times, it's been mentioned, we're doing the chiller project that has a pretty significant lead time, and it's in north and south. So you could spend over it, but obviously we're trying to stay within the 11.
Was there a specific reason you asked that?
Yes.
What are you thinking?
Well, I mean, is there a way to move up that field if there is interest at the committee in moving up the athletic field itself?
So Ben and I have been kind of sidebar talking, whispering to each other. I mean, you have that $1 million in unforeseen emergencies. Paul, roughly $1 million for that field. What do you think?
Yeah, if we're just taking the old turf out and doing some grading, maybe putting in a new pad and new turf, should be within $1 million. Yeah, it should be 600,000 or 700,000, something like that. But it's not impossible to do it next year, but we are behind where you would ideally want to be. We would
Vendor capacity is one of the biggest obstacles.
It is. Yeah, that turf takes a while to manufacture. It takes a while to get there's only a few contractors that install it, and then making sure we can get it done before the fall sports season. It's not impossible, but we're probably behind schedule already.
And so for the sake, I think that's what everyone wants to hear. So let's just get the elephant out of the room.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to ask the questions, and I hate putting people on spots because we've ad nauseum talked about what projects go. But in my experience, when you're trying to redo a field, the field is out of commission for a few months. So talk to us about that, because this field is constantly being used.
Right.
And thanks to the community, we're hoping to put another turf field in so that all these practice times, it's not going to be resolved, because I think we could probably have 5 here and still have, which is awesome for our kids. But what is the time frame that field would be if, hypothetically, no promises, but if it were out of commission, how long is it out of commission?
Yeah, usually the problem is that there's a lot of things going on in the spring. You got track, you may have
there's a team that's not going to be able to play on it.
Districts and
I know how that
regionals
works,
and
right.
things like that, right? I mean, can you shut it down in June 1st and then have it back, 8/15? You can if you've got everything lined up and everything goes perfect. But usually what we try to do is move the first couple home games to be away games and buy ourselves a couple more weeks. If we had another year, that'd be easier to do than the schedules may already be out for all I know. So, but I think it's possible. I think we need to do some investigating. We may need to talk to Jeremy too about how we could go block up the turf, so to speak. Maybe we buy, I hate to say buy the turf on a consortium because it's too complicated to buy the materials over here and then try to buy the labor over there, but it's not impossible. I think we could figure something out, but we'd have to move forward.
I just know from experience that, super candidly, teams get very frustrated because someone gets booted off the field while it's being done. Because this field, as you all know, is used 24/7. I mean, I know I'm exaggerating now, but
summer, yeah.
And so, nobody wants it during their season to be out of commission, but it's going to have to be out of commission for somebody's season. So that's something that has to be taken into consideration. That being said, you said that we're behind schedule, and I understand that, but can you explain that too?
Well, normally you'd probably start designing this project 6 months ago, which is why we were thinking about it for the following year, right? So now we're actually, if we were talking about a year out, we'd be ahead of schedule, which is where we'd like to be. where we'd be starting the design, sometime early next year. We bid it out in the fall and then do the project in the summer of '27. We're trying to pull it up an entire year. We just got to get creative about hiring the designer because we have to have an engineer or an architect to design it. And then we've got to competitively bid it, so we're just going to have to think through some creative ideas on doing that. It's not impossible, but it's going to be a challenge.
Which gets to the point that we don't even necessarily have for the bond. So I'm just gonna, again, ask the question, can Turner and Ayersman work on that legally?
Yeah, we can extend Ayersman out with their contract. That's the way it's set up, actually. And then as far as construction manager, if it's just turf, we may be able to go right to the turf contractor and have them do it directly. So that would save us some time and some markup.
So just, again, for sake of everyone at the table, it's a knowledge piece, no decisions are being made. If it were decided today that, which it can't be because it, well, hypothetically, but just hypothetically, it's decided today, tell me the next steps.
So if we decided to pull the trigger today, we'd have to figure out who's going to design it for us. We'd have to negotiate or get a bid from them or proposal from them on doing the design work. And then we'd have to get them drawing quickly and try to get this thing out on the street early next year. I'd say if we don't have a contract for the turf contractor in February or March, I don't know that we can get it done over the summer. Unless we can do it through the fall into the winter, which isn't ideal for laying turf. You can do it in the, in the cold and in the snow, but it's really not ideal. And then you're talking about not playing soccer and football and everything else in the fall on that field.
And then ignorant question, but, and I don't mean, how hard is it to design a standard football field? It doesn't seem like, I mean.
It seems like you
again,
just pull the turf up and put it right back down
yeah,
again.
so talk to us
It's
about
usually
that.
not that easy.
Yeah.
I don't know, we didn't do that project, so I'm not sure if there's a concussion pad underneath, if we need to talk about that, we may need to do some grading. There's some testing they have to do of the water filtration to make sure that the water gets into the ground and gets into the stormwater. Then there's the whole stormwater with Wayne County thing. Again, we didn't do that project, it was before us, so I don't know what the stormwater detention system looks like. 10, 15 years ago, Wayne County wouldn't have made you put in a stormwater detention system for a football field, now they do. So that could be a total game changer or job killer, so to speak, as far as getting it done next summer. Because Wayne County's not easy to get a permit out of at the moment.
So I'm not even looking at the board members right now, because it's just my general knowledge, but is a possibility if they chose to at least pursue it, knowing that in February we could be told isn't feasible?
Yeah, I think there's no reason we couldn't get started getting Ayersman under contract and getting the design started, and then starting to talk to the county. That's the big one.
And then the other option to the board is, obviously this is what's been proposed that speaks to roughly the 11 million collected. Unfortunately, we haven't banked any yet, which you can bank year after year, but if the board chose to do that, two options, as I see them, is that something else has to go, or you come really close and utilize the unforeseen emergencies. And then,
I think that's right.
and is contingency built into these costs?
It is.
Yeah, there's the soft costs at the line 3 under district wide scope has a contingency. The actual project amounts are just the hard construction costs.
Okay.
So I know, for example, the parking lot projects, Len and I just got bids back for that. We were, significantly under budget by I think 300,000 to 400,000. So, there are savings by doing it design prime because you're not paying a construction manager to put their fee on top of it. So,
yeah,
we save money on that aspect.
That stormwater is a big variable too, right? If it's
Yeah.
if it's just turf in and out, that number I said is probably right. But if we have to put a detention system in, that could be another $500,000
Yeah.
at least.
And the timing
Right.
becomes a nightmare anytime that.
6:29 p.m.
Sorry, I guess I heard you ask me for the time. Anyone wondered?
And Paul, the way that you phrased it, if it's just the turf, and is so beyond like this retention pond, are there other things that you're thinking about? Like, is there a good, better, best way to replace the field, and just doing the turf is the good? And is there other things that other?
The hard thing with turf projects is sometimes they grow. So, you got the curve around the field up against the track. Sometimes that needs to be ripped out and replaced. You got the drainage and some of the gutters around there. And then sometimes people start looking at the track, and next thing you know, you're putting a new track in. You got to get the equipment over it, right? You may damage it. And so they tend, usually when someone asks me what it costs to replace a field, I'll say, $700,000 or $800,000, and then I'll say, but it's gonna cost $2 million, because when you do that and you start to touch it, then all of a sudden the scope grows, and next thing you know, you're doing a much bigger project than you started. But if we tried to keep it just to the field, it really would be just to take the turf up, put it back down, would be the fastest way to do it. It's when you start to get into the grading and the stone, and in Wayne County, like I said, it's been a little bit of a curveball. I wish I knew, I need to get into some drawings and see what's there. Ben, I don't know if you've had a chance to do that or not yet, but
Yeah.
I have not.
What are the inputs needed from the county for the permitting, from a high level? Are there things that we are gonna have to do anyway, if this is a summer 2027 project? Or is it stuff that if we did it now and then the project didn't go, we gotta do it again with the county?
Yeah, it's more just their interpretation on, the water that hits that field. The old interpretation was that the drainage system we're putting underneath kind of acts as a detention system, and we didn't have to put in a separate one, but lately they've been making us put in either a pond or an underground detention system somewhere else. So it's really just getting this project in front of them and just getting their interpretation on it, which I'm pretty sure will be to put a new system in, which I think that's gonna happen either way at this point. After all the flooding that happened in the last few years, Grosse Pointe got a lot of that. The county's taken a different look at stormwater in the last 5 or 6 years. So, but we can get moving, and we can try to get in front of them as soon as possible.
Yeah. And on the next slide, you'll see the 2026, 2027 projects. So, again, under building specific scope, you'll see the Grosse Pointe South ball field was planned. So, the only one that we moved up here is the Grosse Pointe South chiller, which is still going to be slated for 26, 27. It's a long lead item for the chiller and the tower that's going to be replaced over there. But everything else, technology is going to be a big push. And then roofing district-wide is going to be another. We did hire the roofing consultant, which was about 3-4 months ago, Ben. And they just finished up their district-wide assessment, so we're in the process of reviewing that now to see which roofs and which buildings are going to be replaced in this 26, 27 go-around.
So Gary, just to be clear on the south chiller, we've already designed it, bid it, we have numbers in hand, we just don't think we're going to get the actual chiller for another year.
Correct.
It's a material lead time?
Yeah. There's a chance it comes in earlier, but it's not likely.
And the line item of interest for everybody, that does not include any scope related to installing a new detention system?
Trying to find
It's not the
$1,300,000. Actually,
no,
that may, because I think I said 700,000 or 800,000 plus another $500,000, so I think that does actually include the detention system.
Okay, thank you.
Are the student devices, is that moving towards 1-to-1?
Are you asking?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm beginning to now. Yeah, eventually, that's not close, and we're upgrading the current student devices, and hopefully we'll get there, but that's probably down the road, that's not with this money. We're replacing the old student devices right now.
And this would help with the testing, where we would have.
Absolutely,
Right.
which is needed nowadays because it's all electronic, no longer paper and pencil for students. So it's needed, sure.
Question?
I don't think that it's the most appropriate thing.
I've never been, I'm not sure. So.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
No, that's okay. I'm
So
totally
what I'll say at this point is certainly there are going to be more high visibility facility meetings with this type of scope being discussed for sure. I think that we need to both work on the distribution materials ahead of time so that people have that and can ask questions during the public comment period. And I will certainly consider moving the public comment period to the end of the meeting so that if there can be at least a response to what you've heard. I think it makes sense. I believe that the agenda order comes in the way that we've done it typically to be as respectful of people's time if they don't want to sit through the whole meeting. So it's kind of a pick your poison there. So I think we'll talk about that, the logistics of it. I'm certainly open to moving public comment to after the content presentations so that people can see what is being discussed and then have their feedback. The other thing is if the committee does make a recommendation, we would want that to be after hearing the public comment as well. So there's some balance there, and I will also try to organize it better. But I think for today, I think we're going to keep the public comment as the public comment, and hopefully get.
This wasn't sure how the process worked. I've been on over, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. On this slide, can we talk more about what the wired network piece is?
I think that's some cabling replacement. Yeah, some technology cabling replacement.
At the data center,
I think it's throughout the district.
What I remember.
It's an aggregation of a lot of.
Yeah, it's kind of a combination. Here we're saying there's some fiber that needs to be replaced throughout the district based on how the loop's currently designed, and then just a lot of data drops throughout the buildings.
So, and I'm just trying to get my head straight around the calendaring and the cash flows. For you to, so, the 25-26 projects that you're reflecting a fund balance as of about 6. Can we go back? That projected fund balance is approximately 6 months from now.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these projects will be complete by June 30th. The money will have come in from the winter taxes, and these projects will be complete, or is there?
The contracts will be let, and the work will be underway. They may not be complete, but the dollars will be encumbered, if you would.
Encumbered. Okay,
Yes.
not actually. Okay, so
Not necessarily spent.
So, so realistically, more practically speaking, the actual expenditure of funds will be through the whole course of 2026.
Correct.
To finish those projects. Okay, so. Okay.
This is probably a different version of the same question, but how, when we account for spending in one fiscal year or the other, what is the step in the process that accounts that as spent, committed, invoiced, paid out, cashed out?
The work that's complete by June 30th goes into.
Okay, so it's based on the percent of work complete on a project, and how, can you give us an overview or an idea of that process from the financial standpoint? Is that with the construction manager or internal or some collaboration between who's deciding the percent?
Yeah, well, typically whenever we engage a new vendor, we would make it very clear to them that the fiscal year end is June 30th, and we want them to invoice us through that date so that we don't cross the fiscal line with an invoice. And then we make sure that we get them in time for Andrea to go through and get all the books closed and be able to go through the audit and all that stuff. So, and then the project usually sits in construction in process or CIP until the job's 100% done, and then we work with the district to book it as a fixed asset typically.
Okay, so.
And we're watching when things come through in like July and August. We're looking at that cutoff to figure out which fiscal year to put it in.
But to impose kind of the fiscal year, clip with the subcontractors to the greatest extent possible on the invoicing, so that it's very clear cut.
We do.
Obviously that.
Yeah, once in a while somebody will get yelled at, but normally they're pretty good. They like to bill, the last day of the month anyway. It's just a matter of getting them in timely. So.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Then on the next slide, you'll see the preliminary projects for the bond first series. So.
Can I speak a little bit to this just to give?
Sure.
So this took a lot of time to put together, although it looks very simplistic here. But we, and when I say we, Plant Moran, Mr. Matteson, me, other administrators, we tried to balance. Everybody wants their project to be first. This series 1 was 25 million, and so we tried to balance north versus south. Fine arts, athletics, critical needs, safety and security. So, and we've moved things around multiple times to get to this, but this is what we bring to you today as our recommendation. And you'll see, and Gary, I'll turn it over to you, but you can kind of see like the North Sea building, that's a North project, that's a fine arts project. That's all of our bands and fine arts in that. And the auditorium is all in there. Thank you. Sorry about the delay on that. Sorry. So Gary.
Yeah, so we try to balance the district, all the needs. The numbers that are being shown here are preliminary based on the bond. The numbers we put out in front of the bond, as well as contingency amount. Some of those may shift, just depending on final scope as we get redesigned. But ultimately, the first series sales will be $25 million. Here we're projecting $25,077,000 roughly. So it's a little bit over, but we think we can refine that. Worst case, you can pay $77,000 on the contingency to balance.
Like anything, these are just budget numbers until you actually get the hard bids in and you sign a contract. They're all going to change a little bit. But we think it's a good middle ground estimate.
Yeah. Yeah. Because the worst thing you want to do is leave yourself too short, and then wonder why did we add another project onto here. So I think it's a good first approach, first pass, and we'll continue to refine it over the next few months.
And if I may speak to the project, yes, okay, so again, that was kind of our balance. It was the smallest of our series. So the North Sea building in desperate need, that inclusive of the PAC, which is used regularly. The $150,000 in the C building recabling, those two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. The $1.8 million you see on the south, the media center at North, was completed in the previous bond, and so this would be completing the South Media Center. The Alworthy tennis courts, again, to our athletes for our safety. There's some safety issues similar to what we've heard this evening. Staff laptop replacements at 1.3, copiers, $518,000. The South Main office relocation, that's big to me because that's a safety and security. It's the only building. It is very safe and secure, but it doesn't have the secure vestibule that I think is necessary. And then the district IT hub, again, goes with the Parcells pool, repurpose as a STEM facility. Those two are a tremendous cost, but again, they kind of go hand in hand. We haven't imagined what that Parcells pool repurpose will look like, but if you recall, when we were on the bond advisory committee, one of the option was to move that district IT hub that is currently in a location that it gets wet up into a portion of that space. That Parcells pool space is very large, and so again, those two things kind of go hand in hand. Can't really do one without the other. Then you see the soft costs attributed to it, giving us roughly the total. So that was kind of our balance of projects, but I feel like that's going to be perhaps our largest discussion this evening. We did put total estimates on the left-hand side, as you know, and we tried to the contingencies, roughly what a contingency normally is. Hopefully we'll stay below that, but never know. So I think that I'll open it up to discussion from board members and thoughts about that.
So my first question is about the relationship that we have with Grosse Pointe City and relating to Elwood. It's hyper complex is the best way that I could try to summarize that. So can we set the framework of that conversation and what conversations have happened? What are we bringing to the table? What's the city bringing to the table? What are we responsible for? What are they responsible for?
For sure. And I'm going to let Mr. Matteson speak to that, but our projects can be done without theirs. So they're two separate entities, but there might be some opportunities to overlap too if we work on that at a later date. But Mr. Matteson, I'm going to turn it over to you for clarification on that.
Sure. Right now, the terms of release with the city of Grosse Pointe is that they are responsible for 50% of the maintenance on the tennis courts only. Everything else would be on them. But we would have to have discussions with the city to see how we can partner along with this. I know this is a big number for them to eat, so we're going to have numerous meetings with them and see what that looks like.
So 50% of the maintenance on the tennis courts. That Go ahead.
Yeah, Ben, can you tell them what exactly that equates to, like what we're fixing, the tennis courts, the lighting, yada yada, what's all inclusive in that?
Correct, that would be putting post-tension concrete in those tennis courts, resurfacing them, and then upgrading the lighting in those areas. That's part of that scope. Again, we haven't had any conversations with the city yet, so I don't want to speak for what they would do or what they're going to do. So I want to be careful. All I can do is explain what the terms of our lease are. So numerous discussions are going to have to be made with them.
Can you set an initial framework on the terms of that lease? So like, we are the landlord and they are the tenant, is that?
Yeah, and our lease runs out for another 7 years. I believe that's 2032. So it's just that. It's the district shares 50% and the city shares 50% of all maintenance and repairs on the tennis courts only. Fields are a whole different thing, but it's very specific in that lease.
And then is there anything specific that is triggered with capital investment done by the district versus capital investment reciprocated by the city?
It's a large lease. I don't have it memorized, but those are I'd have to look into that. I can get back to you on that.
I don't know for a fact either, but I know that it has been discussed that if we invest X dollars, they have to invest X dollars. And when we do these types of projects, then they put their hands up and say that they can't invest X dollars. So
sure.
My concern is the timing of hashing out this relationship with the city to make sure that it is maximized to the greatest extent possible, in addition to specifically the maintenance part of this agreement, because the lack of maintenance is the reason that we are here talking about investing $1.7 million in fixing this particular facility. So it would be really short-sighted to invest the $1.7 million without understanding exactly how we are going to maintain it over the long haul, better than we have to this point, because it's been difficult to this point. And what that means for us operationally, on the back end as well. But more so just making sure that it is maintained, less so what it costs to maintain it. But right now, I think we are where we are because there has been a lack of maintenance or a deferred maintenance of it. So to me, that is the first top level thing, is that there are lots of questions around how we collaborate on that project. And I worry about it being in the first tranche here.
But I don't think it's a secret that the city's a poor partner in maintaining Elworthy. And I would say that we would need to go forward with the idea that we'd have to maintain this. I think also looking at the lease and maybe looking at a different partner to help for operations such as the neighborhood club, but not the city.
Tim, any thoughts, at least initially on that?
Well, I guess I'm particular in Elworthy, I believe I think it was scoped, assuming that the school district was just going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it would be nice if the city stepped up and took their role in it. But we were going to do this because as we talked about the field being slick and beyond its useful life, the tennis courts are cracked and broken and they get patched over, but they're not an appropriate place to be playing varsity tennis. So I think on that particular line item, the thought was we're just going to do it and hope the city comes along, or the neighborhood club, or the Rotary, or whoever else the other partners there. Dr. Tuttle, I had a question. The North C building, was those two elements, were those scoped from the critical needs portion of the bond, or the bond advisory committee had to scope half of it, and then there were critical needs that were the other half? Does the North C building come out of the critical half?
I think was that us or?
It was us.
It was us,
It was
okay, thank you, it was our 60 million,
I
yeah.
don't really recognize it. So what, can you just clarify?
Have you been in the North Sea building? 'Cause
I'm gonna say
I would
no.
love to give a
Oh, we
tour
need
after
to-
this.
We need to give you a tour of it. I will say that when I came to this district, that was probably one of the most startling parts of our district was the C building. It was the ceilings, if you remember the pictures,
Yeah,
they're
okay.
just very old and dilapidated. But it encompasses not only the PAC, which is huge, we're doing the PAC, but we have all of our
Yeah,
fine arts
yeah,
classrooms
that's right,
and
that's
the common areas are all in there, so that's why
Yeah.
it's
Just
a
take
pretty
a
huge
minute,
project.
just take a
Yeah.
second to refresh, okay?
I know a big portion of that scope was in the 2018 bond, because we actually designed a lot of the mechanical replacements and things like that, and then when we were over budget, we ended up scaling it back. So a lot of that work in the PAC had already been considered, I guess, previously.
Okay, just for, is there anything else related for you guys right there? I have one other discussion piece.
Well, the reimagining the media center, I think that, do we know how we're gonna reimagine it?
Similarly to North, and obviously the staff will be very involved in that. There'll be all new furniture, similar to North,
Flooring, lighting.
Yeah, potentially some of the layouts of that space too. It's kind of a unique space that I think we could probably utilize a little bit better.
I do think if you took a vote, at least for parents and students, what they'd wanna see is maybe that additional turf field at South is more than the new media center. Also the Parcells pool repurposing, I guess my question is, why do we wait until 2027 to do a new bond? Why can't we just do it tomorrow?
Usually, well, typically, not to speak for PFM, but typically it's because we told taxpayers it would not be a millage rate increase. And if we sell that bond too early, it would drive the millage rate up because we have to pay the debt service on it. Or you'd have to pay capitalized interest and pay the debt service out of the proceeds of the bond. But that's certainly a question we could ask PFM if there's a creative way to get that next series sold earlier. There may be, but I think it would come at a cost, either a higher millage rate or capitalized interest.
In the package here, is there a discussion about the future timing of?
it's not in this package, we've shown it before,
Yeah, I
the
believe it's.
board meetings.
Well, we have the capital program. That's where I thought that came from.
Oh, sorry.
So.
It's a question we can ask.
Mhm.
Because we were so oversubscribed and because we did leave a portion on the table, I think we wanted to see a test run, or at least that was sort of my thought, was to see what our interest rate would be and with the credit rating change. I just wonder if there's a way to do another amount sooner.
And we
Because
did not
we
know.
only did the 25
Yeah,
million.
we didn't know the credit rating when we did it.
Right.
So that was.
The other big variable is taxable values in the spring get reset. Usually it comes out in April or May. Once we have that data point, they could probably rerun the numbers and see if that could get us money earlier too. And remember too, we don't have to sell in 3 series. The ballot says 1 or more series. So
Right.
it is possible we could sell it in 4 series and get 10 million earlier or something like that. But PFM would have to run the numbers and they'll probably want those taxable values in the spring.
And is there concern with arbitrage if we do too many? No?
No, that's a good issue.
I guess I just keep wondering about the Parcells pool, repurposing it, and what the timeline is for figuring out what are we gonna do with that.
It's going to be a long design process because I think we do need to get a lot of community input about
Right.
how they imagine that space. So usually it's 6 to 9 months. That one might be more like 9 to 12 or something like that. To really think it through.
My question originally that I started with was also centered on the pool at Parcells and that process, but how to tie back to the conversation about governance in January. I think those are related conversations for sure. How we're making those decisions,
Right.
and change management, because it's not only the reimagining of the media center, that's probably a little bit more fixed scope now because we have an analog to look at at North. But the Parcells pool is a very, very broad conceptual discussion right now. So I think those conversations should be had together when we are talking about this board governance and how we're going to make the decisions, and being clear up front, again, as clear and concise as possible as we get into those decision-making processes.
Although from a time frame, help me with this, we need to establish what our projects are
Yep.
sooner than later, just for design, so.
Yeah, well, obviously we need to engage an architect to start designing and all the other firms to start investigating some of the structural issues at the pool as an example, and environmental and things like that. So that's kind of the next few slides. But certainly we're not going to start designing a project without some kind of approval from the board and from this committee.
And the relationship between the IT hub and the Parcells pool is that we envision them sharing some.
That was a thought. The thought was to get them out of the basement, get them above ground, and one of the places they could fit would be a portion of that space. Depends on some of those conversations with the community about how everything comes together. Would they fit somewhere else in the building? I don't know, but a lot of work to do there to figure that out. But that's one location.
And we talked about if it does go in that repurposed space, obviously you want to do them at the same time. So that's why we put them together. I mean, they were on, they were off, there's no perfect solution to this. But can we go back to the South Reimagine Media Center point? I don't want to speak before Trustee Catton, but are you suggesting in lieu of that to potentially put the South turf in that spot?
Well, and I agree with Clint about having some kind of governance for this, but yeah, I would look at that with the locker rooms. I mean, I think that those are probably of much more interest in engaging someone like the Mothers Club. I think would help in determining, what they would see as the biggest lift to South. I think, security, South Main office relocation, obviously we want to make sure we're as secure as possible, but if you're balancing that north side and the Parcells and north and south side and all of the priorities, I think exploring something like the turf field and the locker rooms would you'd probably get a lot more buy-in in terms of the south side, I would think. And I agree with what Tim said about Elworthy, is I do think that, at least in my mind, we're going in thinking that we weren't going to get anything. We tried 2 years ago with the sinking fund, and I think we did most of the 70,000 ourselves and that patching, and no one's coming to the table from the city, and so I think that I wouldn't want to delay it, but I do think that we need to make sure that we say if we're going to do it, we know that we're going to pay for the operation, so that we're not going to do something and it just isn't maintained.
Am I missing? What are the main impactful athletic improvements at North High School that were considered?
There's the practice turf field.
That's about it at North.
And the locker rooms?
Oh yeah, the locker rooms, thank you. Which is equal north and south, turf for both. And we recognize that we do need to improve that south football field. We just put it in the sinking fund for next year, but. And obviously, if you look, North is receiving a lot of the funds, even if you can, I want to say Parcells is North, but that being said, North also houses the PAC, which is used by everybody.
Yeah.
And then Parcells, obviously, we put that in there because we know they've gone without with the closing of that pool, and so that's why we're open to.
Yeah. No, I mean, I personally think that having Parcells as part of this first wave is the right thing. They might quibble as to whether the IT hub come with as part of it.
For sure.
But I think it totally makes sense to do them together. So I understand all that. The tennis courts, yes. The Performing Arts Center, yeah. Yeah, it really, I think, probably just swings on the media center, whether you switch that out with something else. But
good feedback.
Yeah, I agree that the North C building, PAC, and District IT Hub there's a combo scope there where it's district-wide infrastructure support. But certainly an opportunity in the space that we can hopefully create at the former pool site. So how do we envision making a decision about the scope of projects and what does that timeline need to be for functional purposes? And certainly we can't wait until the January governance conversation to make these early decisions. So help me put these moving parts together in terms of function.
Yeah, I mean, in order to put a good architect RFP and construction manager RFP out, we really want to give them as much information as we can about schedule and budget and scope. So we'd love to have your approval on this being the first phase tonight, if we can get it. If not, we always leave outs in the contract, so to speak, where we can reserve the right to change our mind and move some things around at our sole discretion without them raising the price. It just, obviously, when we get them on board here early next year, they're going to want to start drawing, and we're going to want clarity on what projects those are going to be. So the earlier the better, but at least by the time we get them under contract at the latest.
And what are you envisioning in terms of that, the timing of that contract being approved by the board?
We're hoping to be able to put the RFP out in December and then take bids early next year. I don't know if we'll be able to make the January board committee meetings and board meeting or not, but if not, it'd be in February. So.
Yeah, I don't. So let me ask directly, Tim, are you comfortable switching out one of the projects for another project, regardless of which one I'm talking about tonight, the three of us? Or is that something that we need to do, as I would have thought?
I think the only thing out of there, we'll have million for computers, seems like a lot. Feel like Michael Scott and the office.
You could drive those things right now. You see the new computers.
But I think, I guess I would say the media center is the only thing, and I'm not opposed to the media center.
Right, and none of them, obviously.
Yeah. That would be the only one that I think might fall off of the.
And I want to be clear about what my question is. Do we think that we should switch the scope of the list of projects tonight, in the interest of providing a list of projects that can be bid on in December? Or do we want to make a recommendation, or do we want to try to find a way to soften what we're providing for the scope that allows us time to get feedback from the South community, if it's about the media center, et cetera, right? I heard Trustee Cotton mention the Mothers Club, right? I'm not sure exactly who needs to be involved in, are you sure that we should time this project or that project? But if we actually wanted to have those discussions, we start pushing back a timeline on actually providing a scoped list to Plante Moran in terms of getting a bid out to the architect. So I would be comfortable with the list as it's presented. Again, my biggest priority is that making changes, I think, belongs with that conversation about governance. And if we're looking at probably after the holidays for that conversation, I personally would not want to be making changes to what the administration has recommended to this point. That's just me talking right now, listening to anybody who has a difference of opinion there.
I guess my question is, where did the media center come from in priorities? Was there advocacy from South administration on that, or because what I heard tonight was from parents on turf and nothing about libraries. But when we did this prioritization, was there something around that other than balancing the north side, south side in terms of projects?
Well, I guess from my desk is, I've been hearing it since the North Library's been done, that I've heard it from the library crowd at South that theirs has been ignored.
Because they had it in the original bond and then that disappeared.
Correct.
Right.
So there's feelings there. And it's not like South's library doesn't need it. There's a definite need.
It looks like when I was there.
So, there's passionate people on that side as well, but
Okay, can I try to help, or do you wanna just take it, Clint?
Please.
I don't know that I can help, but can we go back to the sinking fund slide? Can we look at maybe doing some things here, or at trying to get, I don't even know if we can do the football field, but can we use the unforeseen emergencies and at least explore it here?
We can,
And then,
if Gary does a good job and saves us some money, and Ben and the designers, and if we save some money along the way, maybe we can find enough to do all of it.
and I think in fairness, when you look at that balance, if you go back to the other side, sorry, Dr. Bishop. What I have heard historically is in the previous bond, right, wrong, or indifferent, and I don't wanna get caught up in but that some things got cut from South, that there were feelings about, like the office, the media center. And so, if you look in totality, adding $1 million to South from the sinking fund, I get it, it's from a different pool of funds. I think it's worth exploring. And as far as governance, I don't know what the board wants to do with governance, but I think it would behoove us for time's sake, if this is a recommendation from this committee, that's the purpose of these, I think of a facilities committee, I could be wrong, is to bring a recommendation to the board and have discussions there, but. So concisely, I would leave this list and look to put the football field here.
You mean pulling that ahead?
Correct.
I agree with that. I think the funding is probably not the biggest challenge. I think it's vendor capacity. I'll double down on that. That's going to be our biggest challenge. I think we can work around the funding piece. I think it's vendor capacity. A lot of the schools have already got their reservations in, and I think that's going to be our challenge. It's not impossible, but
Yeah, I just don't want to make sure we're not confusing things here, because I think my sense is that we'd all be supportive of trying to advance the sinking fund on the football field, which is what you just covered, trying to get that done this summer. Separately, for the first usage of the $25 million bond, addressing the practice turf field, I think is what.
Okay.
I think that's what Sean was saying, and you can correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong, but I think so. Rather than the media center tackling the practice.
Okay.
I missed that, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I missed that totally.
All right, yeah.
So inside the media center, and I'm not gonna speak for Gary, but I think you wanna do north and south
at the same time.
At the same time for cost, for.
That or do, the South football field and the practice field at the same time. I mean, ideally do them all, but that's probably not a good idea. We don't want to shut them all down at the same time.
No.
Was your thought that one would help alleviate the pressure on the other, Sean?
No, I understood what some of the parents were saying was doing them all at once, and I do know that there's a lot of pressure on the athletic training and practice, and there's a lot of teams that go till 10 o'clock at night, and then kids come home and they eat, and they do their homework, and because we're stacked up. And I'm sure the same is at North. I know it's at North too. And so looking at that for our student athletes around the district, I think would be I always thought that the turf fields were a big selling point for the bond. And it was what I heard from a lot of parents that they were happy about. Because we have so many student athletes. I mean, I think our percentage of participation in both schools is very high.
Do you happen to have an estimate cost for the turf fields at all?
I think it was $1.5 million or something like
for
that.
each,
Yeah.
so 3 total.
Something like that.
So you're looking at 3 and another 1.4, arguably.
Right.
So you're 1.4
Well,
for.
it doesn't hurt to start designing them, and then as we get schematic design estimates, as we get design development estimates, we start to get the costs a little bit more clear. Doesn't hurt to start the design run.
I think this prioritization is great too.
I mean, they're all great, that's the thing.
Sure.
They're all great and they all stink, all in the same, I mean.
I just think that we could probably issue another bond if we look at it within the time period, just because our original bond we were looking at, I think was it 50?
45,
47,
45, yeah.
And I mean, the subscription just blew me away. 100 million in bond subscriptions.
4 times, yeah.
Making sure though that we always stay within that formula, that we don't go above the taxes we said we would have.
So my personal feeling, again, personally, as we're trying to come to a consensus, I would not change out the media center for the practice field. I am fully in support of trying to pull ahead the sinking fund project from summer of 27 to summer of 26, if possible, and starting to work on that. And being clear, again, with how we communicate about that is not a promise, that we can make a decision now to try to go from 6 months ahead in a summer of 2027 project to 6 months behind on a summer of 2026 project. I'm in favor of that, but then that means what we are discussing and taking action on tonight is pulling that ahead at South Athletics at the benefit of the student athletes as a safety priority. We're keeping the tennis courts into this initial project list also as a safety priority for our South athletes. And that makes me more confident that the media center is the correct line item there on the third line in terms of balancing out the other activity here. So again, that's me speaking personally. So I would leave this list as it is at this moment. I think there's some healthy discussions to happen in January in terms of governance, but I fully support trying to pull ahead the sinking fund dollars to make it a 26 project if possible. And I think that means trying to work now on what flexibility options do we have for teams that may be displaced as we get to the end of the spring and the beginning of the fall of 26. So let's hope for the best, but that means a lot of work for a lot of folks at South, right? So let's try to be clear that we are not promising, but let's prepare for the best scenario in terms of hopefully we can do it.
And athletes and parents need to understand, because as I said, I've lived it, that it's your kid's senior year and they don't get to play on the South field, which is tough, and that's going to happen to some teams in a season. And it's a big deal, because
I also think we need to talk about Parcells Pool repurposing a lot here over the next couple months and figure out that plan to engage as many people as possible at Parcells for what that end result is, because they were all really great ideas, but it's going to take a lot of work to get that to that design.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. That's a huge piece of the governance part of the conversation as soon as we can with Plante and review those policies, revisit those policies, and figure out how we can engage the most impacted stakeholders.
I'd agree. Keep this list and try and advance the field if at all possible.
Okay. Was there any other adjustment that you think that we should make as a clear recommendation to the full board related to sinking fund or bond projects?
I didn't see anything else.
Just the idea that we should explore it sometime soon about the next bond issuance.
I agree. Yeah, I think we'll include that language as well when we make the recommendation. We are interested in understanding the timing of the next bond series and what are the key and when will we know, and pros and cons. It's a very similar conversation to what we did our last time that we all met together, hopefully.
Yeah, Andrea and I can reach out to you if I'm
that would be super helpful, and then we can tell everybody exactly when that conversation's happening. We'll make a lot of space available and we'll make sure that we're clear about those decisions. So that's three things that I would include as recommendations. There's a sinking fund action. It's more of an FYI, I think, at this moment, or is it?
well, it's interesting you asked that, because we never went to the board for approval on the sinking fund, we shared the 3-year scope. So a little different from the bond. Again, so I don't know that we need approval other than for information for the sinking fund.
Yeah.
And then the bond, again, I've seen it before and Paul can speak to it, that the board doesn't necessarily make this decision, but this, I know the board wants to. So in that, I think we should have the committee, and I would suggest Trustee Derringer that you speak to it and make the recommendation on behalf of the facilities. I mean, that's the purpose of a committee,
Yeah.
not to rehash all this at the meeting, like, trust your committee, they've rehashed it all and this is their recommendation.
Yeah, I think getting the board's input at this stage is, I think, good. I think where we get into trouble on other projects is when we start to go down a path of designing projects and then halfway through we try to switch gears and go in a completely different direction. That's when we really cost ourselves time and money. So I think, but getting the board's input at this stage, I think is perfect.
Okay, I made it 4 line items in terms of a recommendation. Sinking fund money to try to advance the field to 2026 summer if at all possible, and that conversation follow on to prepare for that. Bond projects as presented is what we saw here in the presentation. The bond series, the second series, and the timing and the impact. So when can we kind of communicate when some of those conversations and discussions will happen, and the bond governance piece that you mentioned, and revisiting the previous policies and adapting as necessary, especially relating to project decisions and change management, I think. So those 4 things I will discuss as kind of a package of recommendations from the committee here.
And then a 5th was what professional services we want to do RFPs for, is that right?
Well, we need to get to that.
We haven't even talked about that yet.
There's a couple more slides.
We're not
Based on what we've
nearly
talked about to
I
this
can hit
point,
those
that's
pretty
what I'm
quick.
summarizing.
I can hit those pretty quick. There's really 2 major ones that we want to get, 3 major ones we want to get started on. The architect, the construction manager, and the technology designer. A lot of the work the technology designer is going to do isn't for a couple of years, but there is some coordination with the architect. You know, as we're designing spaces, we need to know where to put jacks and where to put power and where the copiers are going to be and computers and printers and things. So we do want to get them on board fairly soon. These are kind of the big 3. There are, at the end of this presentation, there's probably another 8 to 10 consultants that we have to hire, environmental consultants and testing and geotech and surveying and things like that. We're not ready to talk about those yet. We're still, thinking through whether we just bring back some of the same vendors from the last bond in the sinking fund or whether we go out to bid. So punt that. But these are really the 3 big ones we wanted to talk about tonight. If you go to the next slide, Roy. And then this, we've kind of talked about this a little bit tonight, where this slide helps a lot just to understand kind of the rhythm of, when do we start design work? When do we bid projects out? When do we expedite and procure materials? And then when does summer construction typically start? So in a November bond, this is kind of what Series 1 looks like. It's not to say we can't get anything done in 2026, but the bulk of the work would get done in the summer of 27. And then you kind of see where Series 2 kind of feathers in, designing in 27, bidding in the fall and the winter, and then starting those construction projects in 28 and then 29. And if you go to the next slide, it kind of shows Series 3. So just kind of the rhythms of a normal, school construction, design, bid, award, construct schedule. That sometimes helps people kind of get it. And really, this project is going to run, the bond's going to run through 2031. End of 2031 is kind of the plan. If we can go faster, we will. We want to avoid escalation as much as we can. But that's kind of the plan for now. But it really depends on the cash flow when we can sell the bonds. To Trustee Cotton's point.
What's the difference between the Series 3 column on the left and the Series 3 column on the right?
Just that it's really a 2 cycle. We're not going to be able to get it all done in 1 year, likely. Again, if we can pull a little bit of the work up into the first summer, we will. But right now, we're planning that to take two cycles.
So $30 million bond proceeds on each cycle? 60 million total, or 15 in one column and 15 in the other?
I think it is 30 and 30. If you go back to the other slide real quick. No, sorry, it's 30 total. So,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Series 1 is 25 total.
Right.
Series 2 is
65
65 split over those 2 work cycles.
Right.
Same on the next.
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so again, could you do 30 million in one summer? You could, but it's 5-6 years out at this point. So as we get closer, we'll talk about that. It may be worth trying to get it all done in 1 year, or it may make sense that it's too much pain to put the district through and we spread it over 2. So all things we'll be bringing back to the committee. If you go to the next slide, for architects, there's a couple different ways, as Jeremy mentioned earlier. We don't have to publicly bid or to bid at all. We could just grab an architect that we thought we wanted to work with and we could negotiate with them. But our recommendation after talking it through with administration is that we do put an RFP on the street for architectural services. We've talked through a little bit, there's about a dozen architects and about a dozen CMs that really specialize in K-12 in this area. There's some smaller ones, you could probably cast a wider net, but I think, I don't think we want some of the smaller firms. I think we want some of the cream of the crop firms. So we kind of talked through, what that list would look like. If you go to the next slide, these are the 6 architects that we thought would make sense to reach out to. French and Ayersman teamed up on the last bond. This is the old, where it happened to Ayersman. This might be an old version of this slide. Actually, Ayersman should be on here with French. IDS is a big firm out of Troy that does a ton of K-12 work. They do a lot of higher ed work. We've worked with them a lot. TMP as well. And then Fanning and Howie is a firm that has really started to push back. They do a ton of work in Ohio. They used to have a pretty strong Michigan presence. They started to push back into Michigan. We've hired them a couple times lately, a couple different projects. And the Collaborative is another firm. They've got Ann Arbor offices. They've got an office in suburban Detroit, and then they do a lot of work in Ohio. These were kind of the 6 firms that we, again, if you replace Stantec or maybe add them as the 7th with, add Ayersman back in, they got cut off the page somehow. But if you go to the next slide, it's just a list of some other firms we consider: Partners Architecture, Tower Pinkster, Wakely, Ghaffari, GMB, etc. Again, there's about a dozen firms, but the first page, if you replace Stantec with Ayersman, are really the 6 that we thought made the most sense for the district. So we would do a closed RFP to those 6 firms. I would hope that 4 or 5 of them would be interested. There were a lot of bonds that passed the other night. I think there was over 40 bonds on the ballot and about 25 of them passed. So there's a lot of work out there right now. So we want to make sure they've got the capacity and all that. We have not reached out to any of them. Really just wanted to make sure that list looked good with you before we started making phone calls.
Can you speak a little bit to Quinn Evans? They've reached out a couple of times. I don't know that.
Yeah, I would say Quinn Evans is more of a national firm. They're doing a fair amount of work in Detroit public schools with us, and they do some work in Ann Arbor. But they don't have a large local presence. They're more of a national firm that kind of looks for big projects that they may find attractive. They do pretty good work. I'm happy with them down in Detroit. They're doing the new Pershing High School down there, and they're doing a pretty good job on it. So, but you could probably say the same thing for a lot of these firms. The problem is we really don't want 12 firms bidding. If we reach out to 12 firms, what will happen is 4 of them will drop out because there's too much competition, and we'll end up with, kind of the same cast of characters. I really think those ones on the first page would rise to the top if we bid this out. That's kind of why we're suggesting that we close the list and just go to those 6. But I'm willing to, if you want to add a 7th or something like that.
No. I just want to confirm, because I spoke with each trustee today, that the objective of this evening was to make a recommendation regarding the bonds projects for the first series, and then also just a recommendation: do we want to go with this closed 6 for the architectural firm, and then subsequently with the construction firm? So those are the 3 things that I think that this committee should be making recommendations to the board regarding.
Can you go back to the work cycle table? Thank you. So, is the idea to bid the professional services in each work cycle as well? Or is this a decision that we're probably making for
Good
the full
question.
series?
Yeah, typically we would bid architects out once for the whole bond.
Right.
That way we can leverage the volume of the entire bond and drive their costs down and help make them efficient.
Right.
And then they would tackle each one of these. But we do put language in the contract that says we can terminate for our convenience at any time. It's a little bit tricky to fire an architect in the middle of a project. You have to do it at the right time. You know, if there was an issue, I've had to do it before, it's not fun. But we would expect them to, you know, especially with that list, we'd expect them to perform well.
Okay. Same concept with the construction manager?
Yep, so we have one architect for the whole bond and one construction manager for the whole bond. Obviously with the sinking fund, it's a little bit different because the projects are not as big and there's not as much volume, but to date we've engaged Airsman and they've done a really nice job for us on the sinking fund projects. They bring in consultants as they need them for mechanical, electrical, things like that. And for most of the projects in the sinking fund, we have not engaged a construction manager. We just went right to the trade contractors and kind of saved that layer of markup. It saved us a lot of money, helped stretch our dollars farther. There could be projects we need a construction manager on for the sinking fund, and if we have one for the bond, it would be easy just to have them, you know, and be involved with one of those projects as well. So, but yeah, for a bond of this size, it makes sense to have one architect and one CM.
And you're showing market rates about $6 million to the architects?
Yeah, right now I would say that architectural fees are somewhere in the range of 6 to 7% in the K-12 market. We'd hope to get closer to 6 and maybe save a few dollars along the way. CM fees are probably 9 to 11 when we get to that slide. So it's a fair amount of our budget. You know, soft costs are typically 25 to 30% all in. So it's not a small amount of money. That's why we definitely want to try to leverage the volume we have and drive those costs down.
Yeah, I fully support going through the bid process and the closed bid with your recommended list. Is there any counter feeling from you guys, Sean?
Okay, so we'll swap Stantec out with Airsman, and that'll be the list. And then if you go to the CM, kind of similar thing. This is, we were planning on doing a construction manager as constructor, which is what we did on the last bond, where the construction manager holds all the contracts, they hold the bond, they hold the insurance. If we have any problems, it's their problem, not our problem. That worked well for us on the last bond, helped us really control costs. So we were planning on doing the same thing. And those fees, again, range from about 9 to 11% currently in the market. We're hoping if we leverage the volume again that we could drive that a little bit lower. If you look at the next slide, you'll see hopefully six construction management firms that we thought made sense. Turner was the CM on the last bond. They did a good job for us in large part. Granger, Clark, and Crispin are three firms that you see a lot. They're all headquartered in Lansing, but they have very strong presences on this side of town. Crispin does a lot of work in the city of Detroit and in Wayne counties, as does Clark. Clark does a ton of K-12 work. We're probably working on, if not $500 million to $1 billion worth of work with Crispin and with Clark. Granger has a strong K-12 presence too. They're working in a couple of Wayne County districts. Realpoint, I believe, has done work in the district before. They also do Rochester schools. I think they're up in Clarkston and Lake Orion and a couple of districts up that way too. And they do a lot of municipal work with us. Rockford's, they are a Grand Rapids headquartered firm, but they do a lot of work. They're doing Detroit Public Schools for us, Oak Park Schools, Redford Union, a couple others. They do a lot of work on this side of town. And then Turner obviously is one of the biggest construction companies in the world. So we thought these six kind of made sense. Again, there's another, the next page would show some other names that we considered. The big exception on there is probably Barton Mallow. They just don't like to do construction manager as constructor in K-12. They do it all day long in the private sector, but in K-12 they won't do it for whatever reason. Same thing with McCarthy and Smith, they prefer not to do CMCs. And we considered AUK as well. They're a pretty good firm that's known throughout the industry, but they've got a lot of work going on in other places. We thought it made sense to utilize the other six. But again, I'm happy to add a name here or there if we want to.
I would add Barton Mallow just because we've had great employees go there. And I do know that they also have a technology design firm embedded there, so I guess it'd be up to them whether to tell us whether or not they do it.
Yeah, I'm happy to reach out to them. And we definitely have them on the technology design list, which I think is the next slide. Yeah, this talks a little bit about technology designer and kind of their role. If you talk to their, so we've got Bart Mello on there. Plante Moran was the technology designer on the last bond. Wright and Hunter did a lot of work with the district before we hired Plante Moran the last time. And then IDS and Communications by Design are really the other two that we see a lot in the K-12 market. Again, there's a handful of others, but these are really the big five that do most of the work in southeastern Michigan.
Does it make as much sense to do a closed bid like you would with an architect as it would with a general contractor? Is it the same kind of analysis?
Yeah, I think it's the same thing. If you left it wide open, you'd end up having a lot of people that probably aren't qualified trying to bid it, and then we'd have to set some minimum qualifications, and you'd end up really, one thing I should mention too is we tend to do a criteria-based selection. That's what we did on the last bond, where we're looking at a lot of different things. Firm experience, team experience, who they're proposing to put on the job, what their safety ratings are, what their insurance limits are, and then obviously their fees. So again, a lot of these firms that really specialize in K-12 tend to float to the top when you do an analysis like that, and we'll work with the administration as far as what the criteria are and how we weight them and how we do the math. But a lot of times the smaller firms just won't compete as well if we left it open. And I don't want to waste their time, quite frankly, because it does take a lot of time and effort to put a proposal together, especially for those smaller firms. So our recommendation is to do closed lists, but we're open to discussion for sure.
An architect first.
Yeah, we need to get the architect on board first, and then probably the construction manager, and then the technology designer, I think, can come third. So we'd probably stagger them a month, so the first RP would go out for architects in December, the CM1 would probably go out on the street in January, and then the technology would go out in February. And they'd each take a couple months to have on the street, get proposals back, negotiate a contract, present it to the board, and get it going. So those are kind of the big three. And then I think the next slide might just be, we skip past that one. These are some of the other firms I rattled off. So we got an environmental consultant, geotech, roofing consultant. We've already hired one roofing consultant for the sinking fund. It would probably make sense to utilize them on the bond as well. Same thing with some of these other consultants, material testing and move management and FF&E. But we have time on these ones. This will be next spring and summer for a lot of them.
So the action for us is to recommend going forward with a closed RFP on those 3 professional contracts related to the bond.
Correct.
Okay. I am in favor of that. There's no kind of discussion or debate on this, right? So I can include that in. Is it going to be 3 separate line items on the agenda for the full board to approve that?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
And I'll fix that one slide.
Well, 4, including the bond.
So the bond package I will talk to for sure with those 7 pieces, and then 3 professional
Correct,
contracts.
so 4 lines.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
got it.
4 line
Yep.
items.
Do those positions participate in every dollar spent from each series? Meaning, the Performing Arts Center, I could see all of them playing a role. When it comes to the tennis courts, does the architect have a role in that? Does the technology designer have a role in that?
That's a great question. So not necessarily. Certain projects, we absolutely need an architect, but there may be other projects where we just go right to a civil engineer to design a parking lot, for instance, which is how we're doing the parking lots on the sinking fund. Same thing with the roofs. We might have a roofing consultant design them where we go right to the roofer and we don't need a construction manager. So that's why it's important for us to understand what the scope's going to be. So the last thing we want to do is we don't want people thinking that they're bidding on $120 million worth of work when it really is only 80 or 70 or 60.
Exactly.
That way we can help control their fees. So that's really critical. That's a great question.
Paul, timing wise, we have 2 board meetings before the end of the school year. We have the 24th and then December 8th.
Okay.
So normally we have the 2 reads. Does that time out okay if we have the first reads November 24th with board recommended approval on the 8th for these 4 line items that we just referenced.
Yeah, that's fine, if that's, if
That'll be December
you'd
8th.
like the board to vote on doing closed RFPs, yeah, that's fine. We're not gonna have them, we'll just be, let's say this, behind the scenes, we'll be drafting the RFP. We'll be working with Jeremy to get the contract drafted, so when the board gives us their approval, we'll be able to put that RFP out pretty quick.
And the only other thing, Trustee Derringer, was for information, are you gonna share, do you want me to have a slide of those sinking fund first year that you can share the recommendation for information, or?
Can I call you tomorrow
Yeah,
to figure
that's
out what we need in terms of managing the conversation and coordinating? It's all here for sure. This is which slides and in which order where they slide in. So yeah, it's all gonna come from this package, so.
Okay.
And with the sinking fund, it wasn't dropping anything that was on the list, right? We just had to
Correct.
squeeze.
Yeah, we're squeezing the turnip.
Okay.
And we will reiterate that there are no promises, we're gonna see if this is even possible.
Yeah, okay. Is there, so, Ms. Agrusa, like, is there, from an accounting standpoint, is there ability to cover on operating and then reclassify to sinking? Is that possible?
Well, I don't know if we really.
As long as it's not too deep.
Yeah, I don't
As
like.
long as it's not too much money, I would think we
We
could.
really won't have to, I mean, from the sinking fund, because we're gonna start collecting those.
If we go over, so like Sean was asking as well, like if we go over on this, on the sinking fund, are we able to cover an overspend on sinking if it's within
Can I
reason by
answer?
operating and then reclassify after the next round of sinking fund payments come through?
Well, first of all, we have to look at allowable uses in the projects. The other thing I would say that doesn't answer your question, but something I've just been thinking about, is we do have a little bit left over in the previous bond that we could maybe pull forward as well. So I think we're gonna be okay. But we have already been taking things from sinking fund and moving them to bond. We've already been playing the game of what pool of money things are coming from.
Okay.
The bond is much larger in scope than the sinking fund. The sinking fund has pretty specific uses. Quite frankly, copiers were in the sinking fund, we had to move them to the bonds for permissibility in those funds, so.
Just a thought from my own perspective, not counter to that, but different a little bit, is that, especially because we talked about the $1 million contingency that kind of is annually baked into our plan for the sinking fund. If we are utilizing that, then the conversation gets real if there is something that breaks, right? That's when we start talking about
For
the
sure.
operation dollars and sinking fund, or potentially
For sure.
scoping a different project back. So we're kind of crossing our fingers right now, knowing that I think that we've got the room to move things here, but it's if and when something breaks, that the conversation gets real, and we'll have to remember what we said and how we reprioritize things, right?
Good point.
We still have the chiller discussions, the concrete discussion, parking lot discussion, and the roof replacement discussion. I think they're,
Thank you.
certainly I think they're less time consuming.
Yeah, these are pretty straightforward, but I don't know if you wanna lead this one
Yeah,
off or you want me to?
yeah, I'll start. Do we want to take a 5-minute break or?
No.
Okay,
I
good.
don't.
We're rolling, we're rolling. I'm drinking too much water over here.
Do you wanna take a break?
That's a different,
You
that's a
asked
different question.
question.
I'm good. Let's muscle through it. Hey, so I'm gonna start with the chiller project. And I'll start with the genesis of our why we're doing this project. So currently at both high schools, we've got chillers in them that are both 25 years old. We are having difficulties getting OEM parts for these units. We've increased downtime on these units, and I'm spending roughly $30K per year in the last couple years just in maintenance. So they're starting to, they serve the district well, but it's time to move onwards and upwards, similar to the turf field discussions. So We went out, Gary was supposed to do this part, so I'm switching gears now. So we went out for bid and we had 5 bidders on this project, with D. Maria being the low bid. And this includes in contingency for a total bid amount of $3,789,390. The scope of this work is obviously replacing the chillers, but also auxiliary equipment. When we met in the design portion of this, one thing that was very important to myself was consistency between the high schools. So we're using the same VFDs, we're using the same contactors, we're using the same controls, so we can share stock equipment between the 2 high schools. We can cross-train employees the same ways. That was a strong point that I drove down when we were in the design phase of this project. So that's our why and kind of a high-level view of the scope of this project. Does anybody have any questions for me?
I don't have any questions, Ben, but I did want to reiterate, we talked about this a few months ago. Well, it seems like a few months ago, but just in the spring when we bid out the architect services to take over these 2 projects. So I think we talked a lot of the specifics about the project at that point. There's been no major changes to the scope that we talked about during the design phase. Then I appreciate that. I think it's good to hear the feedback about Airosmith from Moran as well. Ben, and kudos to you for thinking about things like keeping things standard at both high schools to be able to just design and operate on one set of software and maintenance and the rest of that. That's long-term savings for the district because of your thought process there. So thank you.
Trustee Derringer, can I just ask, given your comment, given that he's already kind of shared this, should we just move to the, instead of
Unless one of the other committee members has
you want to
something
hear the
additional.
background or just look at the bids?
Yeah.
Let's just look at the bids?
Okay.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay.
Unless there is a significant difference when
No.
we talk about the design phase.
It looks like just when it's gonna be delivered, and if that December over July works for the 3.4 million, 200,000 savings, that sounds great to me.
Yeah, then we got great bid coverage. At one time, we were afraid we may come in significantly over budget, but we ended up getting great coverage, and I think we're spot on, so good news all the way around.
District concrete, all right, let me switch gears here on my computer. So,
there's the concrete.
So we're just gonna go to the bid page.
Sure. Concrete's not all that interesting, but.
So when I was talking to Clint today, per Dr. Tuttle's recommendations about this, one of the questions he asked is what is the difference between this scope and the parking lot scope? And I guess the long and the short answer to that question is we used to use Luigi's for a 5-year indefinite scope, and that contract ended in June. And what I utilize with this contract is if we've got broken concrete around the district, we're replacing sidewalks. Typically I'll walk around in the spring and I'll spray paint in the areas that need to be replaced for that summer and schedule that with Luigi's, and then they'll go through and typically I'll hit 4 to 5 schools and take care of any trip hazards or any miscellaneous steps or something that needs concrete work. So we had 2 bidders on this project, and I was happy to find out that Luigi again was the low bidder on this project. We have some unit prices baked into this, and then this also goes for 5 years, and Luigi has, as you can see, he's cascaded the lump sums throughout 2030 on this one. So it's just basically indefinite scope maintenance for sidewalks around the district, and that's about as plain as I can put it.
Pretty clear cut winner.
as well,
So,
on top of a good recommendation.
and it gives us good unit pricing. I don't have to fight with the contractor.
Yes, it's another great example of leveraging volume to drive the prices down, although when I bid this out 25 years ago, it was $3 a foot, so I'm old now, apparently.
So those annual lump sums, I'm sorry, are those like committed minimum volumes?
They're not minimum values. They're just a
Just
unit.
estimate?
Yeah.
Best estimate?
Yep.
Okay. So if you underspend in 2026 and you only need 60,000 worth of support, that's no problem?
Yep.
And then we use the unit price to back it down.
Right.
Back the cost down. Or we do more next year, either way.
Parking lots.
Parking lots. This will be a fun one. So I'm really excited about this project. I personally have a lot of man hours into this job, just going over the scope, walking the grounds at each location numerous times to make sure that the drawings are correct, and I've just got a lot of legwork into this one in particular. So what I'll do is I'm going to start at each school and kind of just briefly go over the scope of work, and then we can kind of go from there. So North High School, what we're doing is the front student lot here. We'll also be doing the area around concessions here at North. Another area we'll be doing some concrete on the side of the building that's busted up. That is too large a scope for the concrete proposal that we just went through. I baked it into this project. One of the additions that I felt strongly about that I'm recommending to this committee is opening up Wedgwood, which is right out here. And what we're proposing to do is, currently we have special needs buses that line up alongside this building on the backside here where we all park today. And they'll line up obviously in the morning and in the afternoon at pickup time. And what the buses are having to do is they're trying to do a point maneuver to try to back into our receiving dock, and they've already hit our building a few times. There's just been some close calls in the parking lot. And the solution that I'm proposing to this board is to open up Wedgwood and provide a more seamless transition onto Wedgwood so our buses can go through Wedgwood.
And right now, that's just a dead end over here, and it's like a little walking path.
It's a dead end, and my goal is not to keep it open all the time. What I want to do is because out of respect for the residents there, I don't want it to be a Indy 500 going through there.
Yeah.
So my proposal is, and it's already built into the scope, is to have gates there where the bus drivers will have remote, it'll work like a garage door.
Okay.
The bus driver can activate that, the gate will go up, and then they can leave out that entrance without trying to hit the building, hit cars, hit students, and provide a better access for our special needs students.
And the city is supportive of this?
I've met with the city, Rebecca Fan and I met with the city, and we also met with residents. We passed out letters to residents that were affected on those 4 houses right there.
And that was included in the Friday communication.
Correct.
The letter.
So, but that's one solution to mitigate the problem of having the buses try to
do a 3-point
they've already they pivot on the new parking lot and they're tearing up the parking lot. They've hit a wall. It's just been it's tough. It's a tough turnaround in there, and this will provide a better flow of traffic for our buses back there, and that's the only intended use for this is buses only or district plows when we plow.
And like the preferred bid here, Best Asphalt, didn't include a line item for the concrete works, so it's folded into the other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Moving on to, any questions on North? I don't want to cut anybody off.
So the buses aren't gonna park on the residential street or do pickup there, they're just using it as an access?
As a
point?
flow, yep, as a flow through.
And it's exit?
Exit,
That
exit
direction?
only.
Not entry.
Right. Moving on to South High School, this is another one that, again, I'm excited about. We're gonna be doing the student lot, the main student lot, and K lot. We'll also be redoing the front sidewalks in front of South. And my intention is to bring those back to their past appearance and put exposed aggregate on the front sidewalks, and also remove the steps that are out there to make that sidewalk ADA compliant. And also at the entrance, there's a lip at one of the entrances. I forget what entrance letter it is, but there's a lip, a 3-inch lip that will be brought level, which will make that ADA compliant as well. So, again, that'll affect all the sidewalks in front of South. There's patchy repairs that have been done there in the past, and my goal is just to replace everything, bring it back to what it's supposed to be, and maintain it from there. So. Any questions on that? All right.
I guess why best asphalt over ASI?
I will get to that, but let me go through Barnes
Sure.
and then I'll tell you why. So, Barnes, that's just a standard project, other than we will be adding 40 extra parking spots on that one that will be absorbed into the current Barnes field. We'll probably take up about 25 foot of that to gain its unused space over there, to gain 40 parking spots over there. If any of you have been over there during an athletic event or a conference or anything, it is a total nightmare to park over there. So my intention is to add 40 spaces over there to relieve the tension that is around there. So any questions on Barnes?
Do you have to take any of those trees down over there?
There will be 2 trees, I believe, that will have to be removed, and the lighting will stay. We've worked with the civil engineer to keep the lighting that is already over there on the edge of the parking lot.
Will this help at all with the drainage of the field?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't think it'll address the drainage. There is a small basketball court over there that will be redone as well for student use. So, any questions on Barnes? Awesome. So the reason why we are recommending best asphalt is we had ASI for the first phase of the parking lot here that was done. I know North was a part of that project, and we didn't have a good experience with ASI. They had trouble meeting deadlines. They just were not a good partner, and I'm not interested in doing any more business with them.
They've also had some issues with the federal government and some collusion issues.
Other than that, they're great.
Yeah,
I think
we've been navigating with legal counsel, but there's been a lot of ongoing fallout from that with them.
So I am not recommending ASI. I'm recommending best asphalt for my desk. That sounds good. Any more questions on the parking lot projects for 2026?
What are there any major concerns in terms of logistics and execution and timing and disruption?
It's a lot of work.
Nothing more than normal
work.
for these types of projects. I know it's tough. Parking lots are really tough for disruption.
It's a lot of work. When we did post-bid interviews, we interviewed Al's and Best, and both contractors said if they were awarded that they would have no problem meeting the deadline for all projects. So.
Also, if you compare this award rec to the budget slide that we looked at earlier, I think we're significantly under budget, so that helps us head in the right direction to do some additional scope too, so, which is good. And the last one is roofing.
Yep, which we just received bids on today.
That's quick.
I explained to Clint that I know this one's very near and dear to Dr. Bishop's heart for the north roofing issue.
Leaking on your desk?
Not my desk, I'm like leaking on kids.
So the why for this project is we have issues with this roof over the roof right above us, 3 stories up, but it's causing issues in the library, and also where the new tower was installed, I think it was 2 years ago. We've had a roof assessment done on it, and the roofing contractors will not perform any more repairs, especially in that area where the tower is anymore. Dr. Bishop and myself have received numerous complaints, and we've tried to do everything we can to mitigate the leaks in these areas. Even I believe we moved a classroom. So that's why there's a sense of urgency to get this one pushed through. We are recommending best. I gotta scroll down here because I'm using my computer today.
Royal.
Or I'm sorry.
Royal.
It's a long night, people. Bear with me. Yeah, Royal Roofing. We had bids from Sheena, Lutz, and Great Lakes, and our roofing consultant was very happy that Royal Roofing was the low bid on this one, and he had good experiences with them. So,
me too.
Yeah. So, I'm happy to present them as a recommendation to this crew.
How does the timing work with the parking lot work?
It's like I was explaining to Sean earlier. Sometimes when we're doing all this construction work, there's going to be a lot of weaving of projects, and this is going to be a prime example of weaving contractors together and scheduling properly so they're not tripping over each other. But just in post interviews today, I expressed the complications to this contractor, and he said we'll work around it. It's not going to be a problem. So we'll preload roofs. He may have to drive over some 21 AA's, things like that to get it done. But it's going to be there's going to be a lot going on. We all know this, and I'm excited. But it's just going to be a dance that we're going to have to do.
Are they going to have to stage tar somewhere?
No, I don't think so.
These
They're
are
gonna
membrane roofs,
Okay.
so they're just rubber membranes that they roll out and glue.
and they're gonna like I said, they're gonna try to load the roofs ahead of the parking lot contractors with all the materials that they need up there.
Got it. That would certainly cause a disturbance if we had one of those tar.
Yeah, those are messy and smelly and
Yeah.
not a lot of fun. So
Okay.
Those are the 4 projects that I'm bringing to this group.
I think it's very clear. I have no problem recommending all of these awards. Again, thank you very much, Mr. Matteson, and by extension, Dr. Tuttle. And Paul, thank you very much for obviously your support and helping coordinate. Very clear, easy to make decisions, quick answers to questions, prepping all the materials. Makes this part of the process very easy, and I appreciate it.
we'll try not to stack the agenda so deep next time.
I don't think we're gonna get around it. It's coming. You guys are gonna see more of me.
All right, so we had 4 agenda items, and then these additionally, no questions about that. I'll speak to each one. If you guys want to also speak, feel free. I'll pause after each
agenda line item in case there's added context you want to add. I won't pretend to speak for everybody directly, so.
I mean, I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, for sure. I have no problem speaking, but I want to make sure that it's clear you get a chance to speak for yourself if you need to on each thing. But again, I think you did a great job, Ben, and I appreciate that very much. Thank you. With that, I will talk to you tomorrow, Dr. Tuttle, about the specifics and slides and preparation for the meeting, but everything was presented today, so it's just a matter of picking the right slide numbers. Any other final comments, concerns from the table?
No, just thank you, all you guys. You've been busy, you're gonna be busy, but thank you.
Yeah, just want to thank the community for coming. I think an engaged community really helps out with governance.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. I said it before. I think that it's important that we make the toughest decisions as openly and transparently as possible. And when there are tough decisions, we'll remember, why we made those decisions when it comes back. So I appreciate everybody here for collaborating and putting the interests of the district and the kids first and foremost. We have to do the best that we can. All right, with that, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.